Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to EduTap. I'm Surbhi, and this is Perspective 360 Degree, your one stop solution for current affairs, descriptive writing, and answer writing evaluation. I know a lot of you face troubles with descriptive writing, and your answers do not get evaluated for free anywhere, but this is your solution for that. We evaluate your answers for free. We teach you the most important topics from current affairs which are relevant from your exam point of view. So if you're a first visitor, if you're viewing this for the first time, kindly hold on. This initiative is going to be very interesting and very helpful for you. Before I move any further, yes, good evening, all of you. Just let me know if the screen is clear to you. The orientation, the alignment of screen is clear as it appears to you, and if the voice is clear. Ananya, Yashwant, Caterpillar, good evening. If one of you could confirm regarding clarity of audio and video, it would be really helpful for me, and then we'll proceed further. All right, thank you, Ananya. So the topic for today is International Monetary Fund, IMF, need for reforms or time for reforms. So this is something you'll get clarity around towards the end of this video as you walk through all the dimensions of this topic. See, before I begin, I would like to tell you there are certain organizations. For example, this is International Monetary Fund. The other organization is World Bank. There is another organization which is known as United Nations. All right. So if you look at their names have international, world, united. It feels like they give a sense, or they give a sense that they are made for all the nations of the world. They are supposed to take care of all the countries of the world equally. But do they really do so? Are they equally taking care of all the nations or of the entire world? Or are they serving interest of a few developed countries which actually created them or where their headquarters are based? So if you talk about developing countries, if you ask from the leaders of developing countries, their answer is no. That IMF, World Bank, and United Nations do not serve the interest of developing world as equitably or as equally as they serve the interest of developed world. So they say that these organizations, ये जो organization है, जो दुनिया की एक power asymmetry है, that West is developed and East is poor, उस power asymmetry को बनाए रखने में इन organizations का बहुत बड़ा हाथ है. But that doesn't mean that if developing countries think that they're trying to support some imbalance in global economy or power dynamics of the world, that doesn't mean कि इनका कुछ positive role रहा ही नहीं है. A lot of positive role has been ascribed to them. So I want to tell you that whichever exam you're preparing for, a question regarding United Nations, World Bank or IMF, इनके functions and their reforms, this can be asked from you anywhere, even in the interview. तो आपको basic clarity होना चाहिए that we are living in a developing country and hence we do not support these organizations equally because we feel कि हमारे साथ injustice होता है in organizations के through. All right, so for today we are taking IMF because this has appeared in news. This is from Economic and Political Weekly. अक्टूबर का जो वर्जन है, अक्टूबर का जो एडिशन है, देयर इज अ फुल फ्लेजर आर्टिकल अबाउट द फ्यूचर ऑफ द IMF और इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड written by Mr. Avinash Parshad, and we will be discussing a lot of points that he has written in this article. हम बहुत सारे अच्छे अच्छे points आज discuss करने वाले हैं, so that they aid you, help getting more marks in your exam. The second one here is IMF raises India's growth forecast to 6.3% for fiscal year 24. तो आपको अपने ऑब्जेक्टिव पेपर के लिए आई नो दैट यू आर क्रैमिंग अ लॉट ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन कि वर्ल्ड बैंक ने कितना एस्टिमेट दिया है, बजट ने कितना दिया, इकोनॉमिक सर्वे और IMF. सो व्हाई इज IMF इवन डूइंग दिस? व्हाई इज इट प्रोजेक्टिंग सम GDP फॉर इंडिया कि इंडिया का GDP या ग्रोथ इतना रहने वाला है अगले साल के लिए? दिस इज समथिंग वी आर गोइंग टू लुक एट. देन okay. Then from Reuters it is coming, IMF says global economy limping along, cuts growth forecast for China, Eurozone. ये भी same lines पे है that why is IMF projecting या IMF making forecast for the rest of the world. So first of all, let's look at relevance of IMF from your exam point of view. Since this is NABARD focus edition, so let's look at NABARD Grade A syllabus first. In your paper 2 section 1 economic and social issues, NABARD does not have a separate syllabus for finance as RBI has. तो यहाँ पे आपका role of international funding institutions, which include IMF and World Bank, WTO, that has been mentioned separately. Then for RBI Grade B exam, IMF and World Bank, again direct part है आपका syllabus में, so सीधा सीधा question आ सकता है. For SEBI Grade A, English writing skills के लिए तो important है ही. IMF is not mentioned separately in SEBI Grade A syllabus, but from economics and finance point of view, it could be so that you can be asked an indirect or direct question from this topic. So kindly understand this, kindly take this approach of answer writing with us. It will help you a lot. Now, what can be the expected question? In सभी organizations के लिए, first thing you need to know is functions, their mandate. थोड़ा बहुत history पता होना ज़रूरी है. Why were they formed? When were they formed? And function mandate that should be known. And what are the reforms that are required, or why are they required? What is the need for reforms? Or if there are some reforms that you can suggest, जो कि आपने किसी expert से पढ़े हैं, if you've read in some article, nothing better than that. Way forward में उनको लिख के आइए. All right. So your answer will appear coming from a very, very intelligent person. So we have jotted down all the points for you. Our experts, our team has made all the condensation, not collection of all the points in this particular discussion. So let's look at the expected question. Discuss the mandate of International Monetary Fund. Why have there been calls for reforms in the IMF system? Answer in 400 words for 10 marks. So please remember the word limit. For the past few days, we have been doing a lot of 600 worded questions. Today it's for 400 words. Now, if I share with you the answer blueprint that has been developed by experts at EduTap, your answer should be divided into 3 parts. That is introduction, main body and conclusion. तो आज का question भी हम लोग इन्हीं 3 parts में divide करते हैं. Let's see what we will start with. Obviously, we'll begin with introduction, that is general information about IMF. See, discuss the mandate of IMF is given straight away in your answer. तो आपको इसको थोड़ा सा elaborate करना पड़ेगा. You'll have to elaborate this part a little bit. So you cannot talk about mandate of IMF a lot in the introduction. Otherwise, you'll not have anything to write in the body part. All right. Some general information about IMF. What can this include? It can include the history, when it was created. You can talk about the voting pattern of IMF. IMF या जो इसका basic functions, 3 functions are there. So with the help of commas, you can talk about the basic function of IMF and you'll be good to go. Then in body part 1, we'll talk about mandate of IMF straight away. And in the body part 2, we'll talk about why have there been calls for reforms in IMF system, की need for reforms क्यों है, and then we'll end with a way forward. ठीक है? So that is this is what our approach is going to be like. This is how our answer is going to look like. Let's start with introduction. तो introduction में आप क्या लिखेंगे? You'll talk about IMF in general, that this is an international body. It helps in funding the nations who are in need. You'll also talk about the quota system. You'll talk about that it was established in 1944. इस IMF को जब आपकी वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 खत्म हुई थी उसके बाद इस्टेब्लिश किया गया था टू हेल्प कंट्रीज कम आउट ऑफ द क्राइसिस, जो इतना फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस हुआ था. एंड द बिगेस्ट मैंडेट ऑफ IMF, दैट इज इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड, इज कि इक्वल सस्टेनेबिलिटी या इक्वालिटी इन टर्म्स ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी कैन बी इस्टेब्लिश्ड इन द एंटायर वर्ल्ड. बट क्या IMF ये कर पाया है? Is every country having the same level of financial stability or financial equality? We don't think so. We don't think so. तो ये जो है अपने mandate को directly answer में लिखना है introduction में, because we will be showing when we talk about need for reforms कि कैसे IMF अपना ही mandate follow नहीं कर पा रहा for because of some of the reasons. Alright, so first of all, talk about that it's a global organization. You know it's a global organization, but do mention the word, it's a global organization. If you remember the number of members, that is 190 member countries, और इसका काम क्या है? To achieve sustainable growth and prosperity for all its 190 member countries. But again, do you think the prosperity levels in India are same as prosperity levels in Sri Lanka or, let's say USA? They are different. They are different. So IMF का क्या function है, how it is doing, that we will be discussing. Then how does it do this? ये equal sustainable growth and prosperity कैसे establish करता है? By supporting economic policies that promote financial stability and monetary cooperation. ठीक है? तो जो भी आपकी country की for example whatever is required to increase productivity of your country, to increase job creation and economic well-being of your country, उन पॉलिसीज़ को, दैट हाउ कैन इंडिया क्रिएट मोर एम्प्लॉयमेंट इन द कंट्री, ऐसी पॉलिसीज़ के बारे में IMF हमें गाइड करता है एंड इट ऑल्सो सपोर्ट्स अस टू इम्प्लीमेंट सच पॉलिसीज़. RBI के साथ डायरेक्ट कॉन्टैक्ट में रहते हैं. ऑलराइट, देन हाउ इज इट, हु गवर्न्स इट, व्हाट इज द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ IMF, लीडर्स कौन है IMF के, दैट इज़ अ वेरी कंटेंशियस इशू. सो जितने भी मेंबर्स हैं, जितनी भी आपकी मेंबर कंट्रीज है, 190 मेंबर कंट्रीज, दे आर द गवर्नर्स ऑफ IMF, यही गवर्न करते हैं IMF को. एंड IMF इज अकाउंटेबल टू इट्स मेंबर कंट्रीज ओनली, कोई सेपरेट गवर्नमेंट नहीं है. बट देर इज अ कैच कि IMF में आपने जितना ज़्यादा आपकी बड़ी इकोनॉमी है, द बिगर द इकोनॉमी यू हैव, ज़्यादा कोटा आप दे पाएंगे, ज़्यादा फंडिंग दे पाएंगे IMF को, तो आपकी जो वोटिंग पावर है या पावर ऑफ इंश्योरिंग अकाउंटेबिलिटी और गवर्निंग द IMF, दैट इंक्रीजेस. सो लेट्स से USA इज अ बिगर इकोनॉमी दैन इंडिया, सो USA विल हैव मोर पावर इन IMF एंड इंडिया विल हैव लेसर पावर. सो ऑटोमेटिकली ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, दे इनका जो गवर्नेंस पैटर्न होता है, इट बिकम्स स्क्यूड इन द फेवर ऑफ कंट्रीज फ्रॉम वेयर मोस्ट फंडिंग इज कमिंग. सो USA के फेवर में थोड़ा सा स्क्यूड फंडिंग ज़्यादा देखने को मिला है बिकॉज ऑफ दिस, गवर्नड एंड बाय एंड अकाउंटेबल टू इट्स मेंबर कंट्रीज, तो न्यूट्रल नहीं है. Then you can talk about some history that in 1944, in the aftermath of Great Depression in the of 1930s, 1930s में Great Depression हुआ, 1944 के आसपास आपकी 1944-45 में आपकी World War II खत्म होने को आ गई थी. So that time it was established. And this is very important to mention here. Talk about the quota system in the introduction itself. एक लाइन में बात कर दीजिए so that in the functions और कि IMF क्या करता है, हम उस बारे में थोड़ी सी और बात कर सके. So on joining the IMF, each member country it contributes a certain sum of money. जैसे इंडिया ने अगर IMF ज्वाइन किया तो हम कुछ पैसे देंगे IMF को. And if another country is giving lesser money than India, तो इंडिया की पावर IMF में ज़्यादा होगी. इंडिया will hold more power in IMF as compared to a country which has given lesser money to IMF. फंड को जो ज़्यादा पैसे देगा उतनी ज़्यादा पावर. So and what is this system called? It is called quota subscription. तो आपके जितने पैसे हैं उतना ही आपका कोटा होगा. And this is based on size of economy and various other factors. So which is based on country's wealth and economic performance. Then higher IMF quota implies more voting rights and borrowing permissions under IMF. मतलब आपके पास ज़्यादा पावर है. Alright, तो यहाँ पर आप अपनी इंट्रोडक्शन खत्म कर सकते हैं. These 4-5 lines they have explained enough what is the function of IMF. IMF की हिस्ट्री बताई है and how does it operate. How does it operate? अब यहीं से इन्हीं पॉइंट्स को उठा के we will show that what are the problems in its operations और कैसे IMF में रिफॉर्म्स की ज़रूरत है. But before moving on to that part, that is our let's delve deeper section जहाँ पे हम बॉडी पार्ट डिस्कस करते हैं अपने आंसर का. एंड बॉडी पार्ट 1 would be mandate of IMF or functions of IMF. So before moving there, if you have any doubts regarding the introduction part, I'm displaying it again in front of you and I'm clearing the ink. तो अगर आपको यहाँ तक कोई भी डाउट है इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड से रिलेटेड, so just let me know in the chat section. Yes, Caterpillar, see, बहुत ही ज़्यादा contention है that we should talk about special drawing rights or not, या IMF की जो governing bodies है, should we talk about it or not? See, here in the question, SDRs are not specifically mentioned कि आपको SDR की बात करनी ही करनी है. Special drawing rights है basically अगर इंडिया का कुछ कोटा है IMF में, so how much right do you have in the voting, या आप कितने पैसे IMF से उधार ले सकते हैं. So that is determined by special drawing rights, मतलब कितना मनी ड्रॉ कर सकते हैं. So these things, ये technical डिटेल्स है, इतना ज़्यादा रिक्वायर्ड नहीं है, बट यू कैन इनडायरेक्टली मेंशन कि SDR का जो है परसेंटेज फॉर कंट्रीज दैट इज नॉट इक्वल फॉर एवरीवन. Yes, 400 words after a long time. Yes, Nikhil, that's right. Ananya, that's right. Arya Chauhan, Anmol, Rohit, Arpita, good evening all of you. Yes, Nikhil, it is biased. All right, so let's move on to the thank you, Ananya. That means a lot. So let's move on to the body part 1, that is mandate of IMF, यानी कि functions क्या है IMF के. So basically international monetary fund एक fund है. All right, बैंक की तरह काम नहीं करता, but this is a fund. और बैंक में क्या है, कोई भी जाकर पैसे ले सकता है. All right, but a fund operates very differently. The more share that you have in donating to that fund, in keeping that fund intact, the more share you have in governing that fund. ठीक है, ये बहुत ही obvious सी चीज़ है. So IMF के basically 3-4 functions है, 3 functions है. If I talk about, this is a picture of executive board of IMF, so that's just for your entertainment. So first of all, ये financial assistance provide करता है. What is this fund doing? Is it keeping money with itself? No, it is actually disbursing money and giving financial assistance. किन countries को financial assistance दे रहा है? Those countries which are in which are in which actually are in times of need. जैसे BOP crisis, balance of payment crisis हो जाता है किसी country में, that it runs bankrupt and it cannot fund its own operations. Country खुद को चला ही नहीं पा रही है अपने पैसों से, so वो IMF से लोन ले सकते. There has to be always a bigger bank or a bigger government जो कि आपको पैसे दे सके if you run out of funds. All right. So for countries, if countries run out of funds, they land into a balance of payment crisis. So IMF gives them funds. क्या इंडिया ने IMF से कभी funds लिए हैं? Let me know in the chat section. Yes, India has definitely taken funds from IMF. If you remember, back in 1991, India carried out liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms, that is LPG. 1991 से पहले we were a closed economy, and because of some of the global reasons and domestic reasons, India में BOP crisis और balance of payment crisis आ गया था. We did not have money left to operate our country for the next few days. कुछ दिनों के ही पैसे बचे थे इंडिया के पास. So what we did was we took loans from IMF in 1991. ठीक है, and in return what did IMF ask us for? LPG reforms, that अपना इकोनॉमी को ओपन कीजिए, अलाउ ग्लोबल ट्रेड, अलाउ इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड, ताकि ये सिचुएशन दोबारा ना आए. ऑलराइट, सो प्रोवाइड्स फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस. आई होप दिस इज क्लियर. आई विल बी एक्सप्लेनिंग दिस अ लिटिल मोर. IMF सर्वेलेंस, व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय IMF सर्वेलेंस? हम ये देखेंगे. सर्वेलेंस ऑफ ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी, बेसिकली इंडिया का GDP बढ़ रहा है, कम हो रहा है, चाइना का GDP बढ़ रहा है, कम हो रहा है. व्हाट आर द प्रोजेक्शंस आफ्टर COVID-19 पैंडेमिक, व्हाट विल हैपन टू द ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी? सो IMF गिव्स दीज फोरकास्ट. ये सारी इकोनॉमीज को पे नजर रखता है, and it gives the forecast, because you know problem in one economy can cause a problem in the entire world. अगर US में recession आ जाता है, so obviously India will also be impacted, and India will be more impacted if there is a recession in USA, क्योंकि our jobs are based on service sector, जो कि western countries की companies से आ रही हैं. So our economy will also might also go into recession. तो IMF का surveillance यहाँ पे बहुत important हो जाता है, so that the global economy is stable. Then capacity development, कि countries को policy making में help करता है. It provides actually guidance and research facilities to countries, that how should you increase employment, how should you achieve sustainable development goals, how should you increase the size of your economy. तो ये सब जो help है, like hand holding, just like a teacher, that can be that is what IMF is providing. So let's look at first one, that it provides financial assistance. इसको आप कैसे लिखेंगे? It provides financial assistance to countries who are members. हर country को नहीं, only the 190 member countries of IMF, they are eligible for financial assistance. And the countries which have balance of payments problems, सिर्फ ऐसी countries में जहाँ पे balance of payments की problem है, सिर्फ वहीं पर ही financial assistance provide की जाती है. And why is it provided? To replenish international reserves, stabilize its own currency and strengthen conditions for economic growth, just like just like it helped India in 1991. तो ये basically करता कैसे? Basically how much money can you take for helping yourself out is according to special drawing rights of IMF. जितना आपने IMF के पास जितना आपका कोटा है IMF का, फॉर एग्जाम्पल USA हैज 17% ऑफ कोटा, सो USA हैज 17% राइट्स ऑन द फंड्स ऑफ IMF. तो वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा $billion हो जाते हैं. सो दैट इज एक्चुअली योर स्पेशल ड्रॉइंग राइट्स टू सप्लीमेंट. तो आपका जो है, in India you have gold reserves, you have national currency, you have dollars, जैसे forex होगा आपके पास, plus you also have special drawing rights. तो आप इसको अपना मनी मान के चल सकते हैं to operate your own country. SDRs India उतने नहीं लेता है, because that is considered as the last resort. Then IMF surveillance. How does it carry out surveillance? As I told you, it oversees the international monetary system and monitors the economic and financial policies of all its member countries. कहीं कोई ऐसा policy ना बना दे कि बाकी सारी लोगों की जो economy है उसको बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान हो जाए. All right, so it highlights possible risks to stability and advises on needed policy adjustments, and you will see that IMF keeps on advising India and China a lot from time to time. All right, so these are some of the snapshots. आपका ये कि global financial stability report, who releases financial stability report? जो national financial stability report है इंडिया की, that is released by RBI. Who releases global financial stability report कि global finances कितने stable हैं? That is released by International Monetary Fund. So हर साल एक नई थीम होती है whenever they release a report, and उस theme के around वो research based होती है. Then IMF warns bank failures highlight perilous financial stability risk. तो वो warning देता रहता है कुछ भी countries को wherever there are financial risks. For example, this is a warning for Pakistan that there are exceptionally high risks for Pakistan and there is additional aid required for Pakistan beyond election cycle. So देखिए Pakistan है, it is its economy is not doing very well for the past for the past many years. Then the other one is Sri Lanka. तो जो दोनों कंट्रीज की इकोनॉमी सही से काम नहीं कर रही है, बोथ एक्चुअली हैव टेकन हेल्प फ्रॉम आईएमएफ ना ही सिर्फ मॉनिटर करता है बट इट ऑल्सो प्रोवाइड्स फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस. देन द थर्ड वन इज कैपेसिटी डेवलपमेंट, ताकि आप अच्छी पॉलिसीज बना सकें, आपको हैंड होल्डिंग प्रोवाइड करता है. सो इट प्रोवाइड्स टेक्निकल असिस्टेंस एंड ट्रेनिंग टू सेंट्रल बैंक्स, फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्रीज, टैक्स अथॉरिटीज एंड अदर इकोनॉमिक इंस्टीट्यूशन. जितने भी इकोनॉमिक इंस्टीट्यूशन आपकी कंट्री में, ऑल ऑफ देम आर प्रोवाइडेड. And how does it help the countries? Public revenue raise करने में, jobs provide करने में, to modernize their banking systems. जो भी चीज़ें economy के लिए functional है, economy में operate करती हैं, strong legal frameworks, improve governance, enhance the reporting of macroeconomic and financial data. And it also helps countries to progress towards sustainable development goals, because sustainable growth is the answer to our all problems. All right, so I think functions part is very much clear. Mandate क्या है IMF का, what are the functions of IMF? One and the same thing. Now moving on to need for reforms. कि अगर इतनी अच्छे IMF functions provide कर रहे हैं, it is giving money also, it is giving technical assistance also, it is making forecast also. So what is the need of reforms in IMF system? The need lies in your SDR system. The need lies in the quota system of IMF. The need lies in the name of IMF, which actually includes the word international. तो international अगर है तो सारी countries को equally treat करना चाहिए, but it is not happening. That's why developing countries या जो eastern world है, developing countries and eastern world, they are demanding a lot of reforms in IMF. Plus, most importantly, एक RBI governor की speech है regarding climate crisis, how climate crisis impact currency या central banks को कैसे impact करते हैं. So basically, if a climate crisis occur, let's say monsoon fail हो जाता है किसी कंट्री में, सो व्हाट हैपेंस इफ दैट कंट्री इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन एग्रीकल्चर लाइक इंडिया, तो पूरा इकोनॉमी प्रॉब्लम में आ जाता है, रिसेशन में भी जा सकता है. सो अल्टीमेट बर्डन किस पे आएगा टू कंट्रोल इन्फ्लेशन? इट विल कम ऑन द RBI, Reserve Bank of India पे आएगा. So in such situations where climate crises are impacting economies a lot, where wars are impacting economies a lot, for example Israel Palestine है, Russia Ukraine है, where pandemic has impacted economies a lot, वहाँ पर जो IMF का structure है, that is based on the documents that were prepared for IMF, IMF functioning in 1944. So this has to be evolved. This has to evolve with time. There have to be changes, and these are the changes which are demanded. Let's study them one by one. The first one is unequal representation. Then there is Article 4, which is requiring a restructuring. Then there is one size fits all approach, which is not suiting us, suiting IMF. Then there is inadequate crisis management. We studied that IMF manages crisis, BOP crisis manage करता है, but there is inadequate. Why is it inadequate? We'll see. Then there is rising competition. Rising competition, IMF का किससे competition है? Let's look at unequal representation. So as I told you, जितना आपका share है IMF में, based on that, you have power in IMF. So basically there is unequal representation because some countries are overrepresented in IMF while other countries, for example, India is, according to UNFPA, we are the biggest country of the world in terms of population, and we are also the fastest growing economy. तो हमारा शेयर ज़्यादा होना चाहिए IMF में. All right, plus we need more assistance to develop our growth story, to run our growth story. But ऐसा नहीं है. The highest share, जो highest quota है IMF में, that belongs to United States of America. So also, if you have to bring any reforms in IMF system, you need 85% of members in your favor. 85% को 100 में से minus कीजिए, you're left with 15%. 15% लोग आपके against हो सकते हैं, and 85% you need in favor to carry out any reforms in IMF. And just look at this. USA itself has 17.7% quota. तो क्या आप कोई भी reform, can you carry out any reform if you do not have majority of USA? अगर आपके favor में USA नहीं है. So that is a very skewed distribution because higher IMF quota means more voting rights and borrowing permissions. This has to change if IMF is actually International Monetary Fund and not डोमेस्टिक मॉनेटरी फंड. सो अगर आप बात करें जो द मोस्ट पावरफुल नेशंस, द मोस्ट रिच नेशंस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, विच इज द G7 group, they own more than 40% of the quota. That leaves absolutely no space with countries like India to carry out any reforms or to bargain in any way at IMF. So countries like India and Russia, they have just 2.5% quota, and the balance of economic and geopolitical power ये shift हो गया है, but this has not been taken into account in the structuring of IMF. All right. Then there is Article 4, which is requiring restructuring. Article 4 क्या है? Article 4 is basically the lens through which IMF looks at economic health और financial health of all the countries. तो अगर Article 4 की तरफ से Article 4 अगर IMF यूज कर रहा है आपकी कंट्री को जज करने के लिए और टू गिव एनी फ्यूचर प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स, तो अगर उसी में अगर प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, बिकॉज दैट इज वेरी ओल्ड, 1944 से है वो, सो if that is very old, then don't you think this way of looking at countries and deciding health of countries? For example, it outlines IMF's functions and responsibilities regarding its member countries, exchange rate policies and economic stability. तो economic stability IMF decide करता है कि इंडिया की इकोनॉमी कितनी स्टेबल है और पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी कितनी स्टेबल है, but it is using very old parameters for that. And for example, let's say India is taking a loan from IMF for, let's say, resilience, कि आने वाले टाइम में वी हैव टू मूव फ्रॉम फॉसिल फ्यूल्स टू इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल. सो लेट्स टेक लाइक $100 million loan from IMF. This is India doing to actually move to इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स, ठीक है, ताकि हमारी कंट्री में पोल्यूशन कम हो जाए. देयर इज मोर अडेप्टेबिलिटी. बट देयर इज अनदर कंट्री वाई जिसकी इकोनॉमी पूरी स्टम्बल कर गई है. देयर इज बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट क्राइसिस एंड इट इज अगेन टेकिंग $100 million लोन फ्रॉम IMF टू फॉर एक्चुअली कंजम्पशन, बेसिक कंजम्पशन के लिए लिया जा रहा है. सो बोथ लोन्स दे आर इक्वेटेड इक्वली, कि दोनों कंट्रीज की हेल्थ को खराब ही माना जाता है इफ दे आर टेकिंग द सेम अमाउंट ऑफ लोन. बट ये क्या है? दिस इज फॉर डेवलपमेंट, दिस इज फॉर जस्ट बेसिक सस्टेनेंस. सो ये जो कंट्री, दैट इज कंट्री वाइड, दैट इज इन अ बैड सिचुएशन एज कंपेयर टू इंडिया. बट यहाँ पर IMF दोनों को बराबर ही मानता है व्हेन इट डिसाइड्स दैट व्हाट इज द इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी इन दीज कंट्रीज. ऑलराइट. सो वो आर्टिकल 4 में आपको रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग व्हेन यू कैरी आउट, ओनली देन such changes will come. Then there is one size fits all. What is one size fits all? कि IMF सारी कंट्रीज में सेम पॉलिसीज ही इंप्लीमेंट कराना चाहता है, विच आर द पॉलिसीज ऑफ लिबरलाइजेशन, प्राइवेटाइजेशन एंड ग्लोबलाइजेशन. अब ये जो पॉलिसीज है, समटाइम्स फॉर एग्जाम्पल व्हेन LPG रिफॉर्म्स वर कैरी आउट इन इंडिया, हमारी बहुत सारी स्मॉल स्केल कॉटन इंडस्ट्रीज थी जो कि एक्चुअली दे डाइड डाउन, दे कुड नॉट एक्चुअली बियर द कॉम्पिटिशन. तो हमारी बहुत ही छोटी स्मॉल स्केल इंडस्ट्री जो कि इंडिया को बहुत ही प्रॉस्परस बना सकती थी, दे डाइड डाउन, ड्यू टू which there were a lot of suicides. Our economy also toppled, but IMF does not understand this, so it imposed policies on countries without understanding the distinct characteristics of countries that made those policies difficult to carry out, unnecessary or even counterproductive. And हमारे same issue WTO के साथ भी है. Alright, so conditions which are placed on loans कि आप अपनी economy एकदम से open कीजिए या do not have any companies which are backed by the government. तो हमें PSUs काफ़ी बनाने पड़े. Again, PSUs went in losses because government was not backing them as much as it was earlier. So conditions placed on loans, they're too intrusive and compromise the economic and political sovereignty of the receiving countries. ठीक है, तो वो country खुद को ही independently govern नहीं कर पाती. So many of these changes are simply politically impossible to achieve. तो वो domestic opposition काफ़ी होता है. So this one size fits all is not fitting the entire world. So here we need a change. Then there is inadequate crisis management. अब crisis क्या हो रहा है? If you remember, there was this Silicon Valley Bank crisis in USA towards in the like first quarter of this year. Silicon Valley Bank crisis के at least आपने नाम सुना होगा. Basically वो एक बैंक था, एक रीजनल बैंक था USA में, that failed. ठीक है, जिसके जो फंक्शनिंग था वो फेल हो गया और इट एक्चुअली ट्रिगर्ड अ रिसेशन इन यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका. ठीक है, बट USA हैंडल्ड इट. USA ने अपनी पॉलिसीज की मदद से उसको हैंडल कर लिया. अब अगर वो रिसेशन हैंडल्ड नहीं होता, हैड USA नॉट बीन एबल टू हैंडल इट, तो वो इंडिया में उसके बहुत सारे इम्पैक्ट्स देखने को मिलते. नाउ इट इज सेड दैट इफ such level of bank failed in a country like India, तो हमें IMF से support नहीं मिलता, insolvent हो जाते हैं काफ़ी लोग and a lot of people land into trouble. तो जितना ज़्यादा support is available with developed countries, the same level of support is not available with developing countries. You can actually read this. ये EPW का ही snapshot है that we have put this in the PPT, and the PDF for this will be available tomorrow on our Telegram channel. So kindly read this out. So basically जो non-safe countries currencies वाली countries हैं, there are 5 safe currencies that you have with IMF, which are US dollars, euro, Japanese yen, British pound sterling and Swiss franc. Chinese renminbi भी is counted here. तो ये जो currencies हैं, जो countries actually ये currencies produce कर रही हैं, for example USA, इन कंट्रीज की इकोनॉमी पर ज़्यादा क्राइसिस नहीं आते बिकॉज दे आर द प्रोड्यूसर्स ऑफ स्ट्रॉन्ग करेंसीज. बट कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया विच आर एक्चुअली प्रोड्यूसिंग सॉफ्ट करेंसीज, जैसे रुपी है आपका, विच आर नोन एज नॉन सेफ करेंसीज. तो जब भी इंटरेस्ट रेट्स राइज होते हैं, प्लंजिंग करेंसीज होती हैं, व्हाट हैपन्स, यहाँ से जितना फॉरेन कैपिटल होता है वो बाहर चला जाता है. सो देयर इज फ्लाइट ऑफ फॉरेन कैपिटल दैट अकर्स एंड हेंस पॉलिसी स्पेस जो होता है आपका कोलैप्स हो जाता है. देन RBI हैज टू इंश्योर वेरी स्ट्रिक्ट नॉर्म्स इन द कंट्री टू control inflation or to control expenditure of people. So they have to cut back on spending and tighten their monetary policy. Countries like India. तो अब अगर ये crisis है which is not at the same level which is happening in developed countries or developing countries में कोई parity ही नहीं है. Countries like India are more impacted. Then what is the role of IMF? 1944 से अब तक IMF ने इस चीज़ को डील क्यों नहीं किया? That there are countries which are producing soft currencies या non-safe currencies. तो IMF का तो रोल है to improve sustainability, to promote financial equality in the world. So why is it not doing it? तो यहाँ पे inadequate crisis management की बात आती है, which has been related to IMF's functioning. Then there is rising competition because we see that IMF is not a democratic institution. That's why there are a lot of regional banks coming up which work on a fallback of IMF, which are, for example, New Development Bank, which is also known as the BRICS Bank. यहाँ पे S capital आएगा. Then there is Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, AIIB, Asian Development Bank is there. If you look at World Bank and IMF and look here, US has veto power in both of these institutions. But ADB में there is no veto power. AIIB में China had veto power, but it is about to forego. अपनी veto power नहीं रखने वाला है. Alright, so these more democratic regional institutions जो कि एक region की need को समझ सके. For example, reduce poverty. That is the goal of Asian Development Bank, which is very much relatable to countries in Asia, जो कि इसके नाम में reflect करता है. So these are becoming more relevant as compared to International Monetary Fund, जिसका जो bias है mostly Western countries की तरफ रहा है. So these are 5 needs for reforms in your IMF system. Now what can be the way forward? Just say that the जो आने वाले क्राइसिस हैं, for example, especially the climate crisis, the wars, the pandemic, they call for the new reforms in IMF, restructuring in IMF, and if IMF does not do it, तो वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा irrelevant भी हो सकता है. How will we write in a polished manner? So today the international crises refracted by asymmetrical system are more frequent, profound and broader, piling up on top of and compounding each other. Then with rapidly evolving global arrangements of developed and developing economies, it is necessary to bring about important reforms in IMF, क्योंकि globalization की वजह से developed and developing economies are becoming more and more intertwined, hence more equality within IMF is required. A change in the SDR system या quota system is the need of the hour. Else it could be slowly but steadily pushed into irrelevance. तो आपने directly नहीं बोलना that IMF will become irrelevant. Just say it could be. It will be, but it could be slowly pushed into irrelevance. And what we want is we need the IMF to help support a system better at absorbing shocks, more symmetrical and not so quickly becoming unstable. So that is your way forward. I'm displaying the question again. Discuss the mandate of IMF. Why have there been calls for reforms in the IMF system? Answer for 400 words for 10 marks. And this answer is available for free evaluation. Where do you get it? Post your answers in the next 48 hours. That is by Wednesday 5 p.m. in the comment section under this video. इस वीडियो के नीचे जो comment section है उसमें प्लीज़ अपने आंसर्स को पोस्ट कीजिए and our team evaluates them entirely free of cost. Proper free evaluation है, comprehensive evaluation. You will be given marks out of 10 for the answers that you are posting. जल्दी से जल्दी post कीजिए. Don't delay it for later because it will add up to your anxiety. Just get it done maximum by tomorrow. Tomorrow morning you will get the PDF for this PPT. Till then you can revise this video, watch this again for more clarity. And I will see you on Wednesday at 5 p.m. now with another important topic for your examination. You can reach us to at hello@edutap.co.in or this phone number is available for you. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel and let us know if this initiative is helping you out in the comment section. Alright, now if there are any doubts, just let me know so that we can call this a day. Yes, Ananya, that's right. If there are any doubts, kindly post in the chat section. A caterpillar, okay, we'll request that. All right, so I'm waiting for the doubts, if any, and then we can move on from here. All right, so we'll call this a day, and I will see you on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Take care, all of you, and all the very best for your exam. Have faith in your preparation.